Welcome back to part 2 of the leadership episodes of Glowing in Tech with Renee Hunt. Last week we spoke to Renee about her journey into leadership and how she became the Chief Technology Officer of Compare the Market. We also spoke to her about the challenges she faced in her early career.
Something that you've spoken about a few times is mentorship, and kind of that seems to have played a big part in how you've your career and like your trajectory. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that? Because I know that something that can be tricky is like both finding a good mentor, but also like maintaining relationships and knowing where to look for mentors. So
Definitely. I mean, I don't know that I had I've been married once before. My ex-husband's dad was a very, very successful man, and he was successful in business as well. So he was my first sort of role model, and I was the only one of his, extended children base that even cared about that. So he was happy to mentor me. Now, he's my father-in-law. We didn't call it that, but when I look back on the kinds of conversations that I had with him that weren't about family, it was mentoring, read these books, do these things, learn to play golf, blah, 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 blah. Here's how a board works. I mean, I grew up working class in America. I didn't know what boards were, right? And I didn't know Black people could be on them. And he was on like massive boards. And I'm like, you get paid to take a meeting 5 days a year? He's like, yeah, he got paid more than me to take meetings 5 days a year. Do tell a girl how this works. And so that was my first mentor. And I think that allowed, and he talked about his mentors and the people he mentored. So that was like the first introduction I had to mentoring, and that was a thing. And I'm like, will be forever grateful for that. And then over time, I've collected people that I've either worked for or worked with. And when that relationship was broken, I asked them to mentor me so that I could keep them in my lives. I think it's really difficult to ask your boss to mentor you because it just is a weird dynamic, right? Sponsor you? Yes. Mentor you? No. And I need mentors who have nothing to gain from what they're going to tell me or from the relationship, other than the feeling it gives them inside to share and help somebody else, which is fabulous, by the way. So I always mentor other people because it just makes me feel really good to watch them succeed and to know you're like, I raised that one's all right, that one's cool, that one will be okay. So my mentors usually have a couple at a time. I'll be really honest, I've had like 2 Black mentors in my whole career, and I'm on 37 years now. But, white men are in the rooms that are making decisions, and mentors should also be looking out for opportunities for you. So make peace with that until we overcome. Make peace with that because there won't be enough Black or female mentors to go around. And if you have a good chemistry with somebody, or you work for somebody who actually cares about you and wants to see you succeed, shouldn't care what form. Sometimes you have to educate them. They say stupid things like, they don't care what color you are. I'm like, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I'm sure that wasn't the reason. I'm like, no. And that, having somebody who can talk about intersectionality is helpful, but it's more helpful to have somebody who truly cares about you.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I had a meltdown with my mentor a while back, not since I joined CTM, everything's lovely. But I mean, I called him in a panic when I was promoted saying, I can't do this. And he's like, it's not like you to have imposter syndrome. I'm like, it's not imposter syndrome. It's like, I can't do it. Don't know anything about this and this and this and this. He's like, well, you can learn, duh. But he's known me long enough that I could call somebody and have a meltdown.
Yeah.
And no, that's not going anywhere, except I just told everybody. Proper meltdown, shaking. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's important because you can't always be confident and bold when you're making these big decisions and you're trying to figure out where you fit and you're having to learn. So
yeah, and you have to be able to tell somebody like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like if you do that in your organization, I would hope that most organizations are mature enough and caring enough to recognize that's your emotion speaking,
Mm-hmm.
or it might even be reality, right? But I wouldn't do it. Like, I would not share to that level to anyone for whom that puts them in a difficult position. Because if they're a director in an organization, for example, and you tell them, I've been given this financial ledger and I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm Googling it every 5 seconds to do it, they may now have a risk that they have to manage somehow with that information. It's like, don't be sharing that. Share that with your mentor. Because they don't have to do anything with it but talk you off a ledge and say things like, most people Google everything.
Yeah. And is that why you
I learned
say
to code before there was YouTube.
Oof. I don't know if we could do that.
no?
Honestly,
There is
these
no
stupid things
way.
called books.
There is no. I actually can't comprehend how people use the code without Googling.
Honestly, I learned to code where you didn't know if it ran
Yeah.
until it was
Did the whole
compiled.
compiler-
Yes, honey. And then you would find out that you missed a paren on line 2 of code that's this
Yeah,
long.
literally.
Yeah.
It's just about to kill yourself. Yeah, it's fun.
So would you say that coding is relatively easier?
No,
Oh.
no, because there's so much more to know.
Yeah.
There's so much more to know. Like, I think that's a fool's game to go. Back in my day, it was hard. I think there were fewer resources. Code was much simpler in many ways. So in other ways, it was hard. No, I don't think it's fair to draw comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So have you faced any barriers when it came to leadership? What's been your story in terms of that?
Oh, wow. Well, like I said, we were talking earlier, and I'm like, all y'all women now are living in Disney World.
Yes,
Like,
that is what was said.
That's right. We paved the way.
They really have.
It's barriers. I think the big barriers are a lot to do with perception, a lot to do with how organizations think about leadership and managerial roles, and then hopefully people are not so obtuse to have a picture in their head. But often, like, I've worked in organizations where leadership was really challenging because there was like an order. He's next, right? You'd have somebody who is outstanding and doing a great job, but this guy's been waiting patiently and they're already a level ahead of them, and they're next. And I find that quite claustrophobic. I took myself out of corporate life for a long time and ran my own, call it contracting, call it consulting. I didn't distinguish. People called me a contractor, but I acted like a consultant and I earned like a consultant. So, go girl. So I think, and I did that because I didn't want to participate in that. Like, it just felt ridiculous. And I think in the UK, it feels like it's different than in America. But I think the biggest challenge is how organizations think about opportunity, and they don't have open, you can't apply. Sometimes the roles aren't even published. So I would say look for organizations, especially if you're in a big company, that publish roles, and go on the interviews, even if you don't have a chance, even if you don't think you can have a chance, because it's good practice. And the feedback you get in an end of year is about you right now, right? And if a company is really progressive, it might be about your potential.
Right.
It's different than the feedback you get for that specific role when you go for an interview. And here's where you're lagging. Here's where your gaps are. That's priceless.
Yeah.
Because then you know what you need to work on if what you want to do is that next role. And then I would say be choosy when you're talking to organizations about, ask questions. Do you advertise all your roles? What about senior leadership roles? Do those get advertised? Because often those are like a little committee and we could decide it's going to go to that person. Or they'll say it's going to go to that person, but we'll advertise it so that it feels fair. Just want to hang your head. So
yeah.
I think those are the barriers that, if we're going to be a competitive nation, and there's so much work that we have to do to bring the UK back into a competitive stance and to a growth stance, we can't leave any of our talent behind. And if we think that talent all have the same background, shape, experiences, we will leave our talent behind. We absolutely will. I have a man working for me who never went to university, and he's one of my senior directors. And nobody would question his ability to do what he does. He's done a lot of work to learn about business, to raise his other skills, and he's learned by doing to be one of the best software engineers I've ever met. Right now, back in the old days, he wouldn't have made it past the CV because he doesn't have a 2-1. What a bunch of nonsense.
Oh, I see.
What a bunch of nonsense. And then some organizations wouldn't even consider a person like that for senior leadership because he never went to university. And I'm like, okay, that might be true if he hadn't filled in gaps around knowledge in marketing, knowledge in accounting, knowledge in finance, the things that make you credible as a director. But you shouldn't have to go to university or MBA school, as I did, to fill in those gaps. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope as a country, we become way more inclusive and look at the talent of the person and look at their skills rather than some piece of paper that is probably, what about that guy in America that just made up his CV? Like, honestly, that would never happen to a Black woman. They'd be checking everything.
Yeah, every
I'm
single
like,
reference.
but like some, set of references. I hope I'm really optimistic that we have to do it because we don't have people, killing themselves. Well, that's not true. We do, but we can't import talent as easily as we used to. And so we have to really help develop the talent we have in this country. And the great news is we have a very multicultural country. We have people with all kinds of lived experiences that will bring all kinds of skills to the table. We can't just say only those people are leaders. It's just garbage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Garbage.
So what would you say to those early career devs who have those gaps? How would I start to become
How early? Because I'm like, when you're an early career dev, right? Like, be the best darn engineer and throw yourself into the stuff that scares you and try to acquire skills or appreciation for the skill, right? Because the more rounded you are, like I love people who are either comb-shaped or T-shaped. So by T-shaped, deep in one area, but knowledge of a wide. And then comb-shaped might be, I dabble in a bit of this and I can do a bit of that. And I do one, it makes you really employable. 2, it makes you very fungible. It's one of my favorite words. I have to yell at my finance director. My people are not fungible. I'm like, you're not going to have a nose surgeon do your vasectomy. No, you're not. But they're both doctors. They both went to med school. Right? I'm like, stop it. So, but if you can allow yourself to have a few different skill sets, that's helpful. It gives you the ability to do jobs that require you to be broad. Right? But I'm going to say be good. Right? So resist the temptation to become a BA. Nothing wrong with being a BA, but if you did a boot camp to learn to code. Give yourself a chance. I met a woman about 10 years ago, and she went to Makers, and she had been a university professor, and decided to career change into writing code. Amazing, right? And she was frustrated because a lot of the other entry level, like first careers devs, were way faster than her. And unhelpfully, her boss was like, she's a bit slow, right? And my question back to her was, are you accurate? Like, are you slow and your code is riddled with bugs? And the answer was no, code's really good. And I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. You'll get faster, right? Making you have higher quality is harder than getting you comfortable with a language where you can write it a bit faster.
Okay.
Right now, she's got a phenomenal career, right? And she went deeper. She was like, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to do all this shit. So she's like doing proper engineering. But she was at that weird point where she could have very easily been talked into, maybe I could be a BA. Maybe I could be a TA. Maybe I could be. And I'm like, it's too early.
By BA, do you mean business analyst?
Business analyst.
Yeah.
Or a technical analyst or a product manager or all. And there's like, I want product managers who have coded. I really do. I want everybody. Like, I think coding should be like reading, and you learn it in school, and everybody has a small appreciation for it because it's 2023 and like whatever. We don't teach people pen quilling anymore. We should be. Do they teach cursive in school anymore? It's a good question.
I don't know, but they do teach coding, so we are like that.
Coding, not cursive. Then we can write in a secret language that our younger children don't understand. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a basic skill. And then from there, you go on to do other things. And there's no shame or disrespect for people who decide, I don't love software engineering. It's not for me. Like, look, I left it, right? I'm going to go do this. My worry is that, especially for women and women of color, for whatever reason, there isn't the same level of grace and patience.
Absolutely.
For how we learn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's be clear. Women invented this industry. It is ours. There would be no code if there was not women in every decade after Ada. Like, get real. So the idea that somehow our brains don't naturally, like, it's such a ludicrous bunch of nonsense. But we do come to it differently. And when it's men who are evaluating, they don't often appreciate it. And that's my worry. Like, I want y'all to hurry up and get through makers and get to be seniors and principals and staff engineers. So people go, leave her alone, she's fine, right?
Yeah.
Leave her alone, she's fine. You back over there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how we're going to build up so my advice is hang in there. Give yourself the grace to be a bit crap. Do like 100 days of code. Big fan of 100 days of code because it's your own pace. You get like, this is it. Okay, so when I was in school, I was really bad at maths. I did them. I shouldn't say that. I wasn't bad at maths. I just found it really hard. And I decided that because it was hard, I was bad at maths.
Yeah.
And then I listened to the very, very dishy Professor Brian Cox, on a podcast. And he said, oh, when I left being a pop star, I went back to university. And yeah, I really have to, he said, I really had to like work at maths. And he said, but everybody has to practice maths. It's not natural. And I was like 40 something years old and really like they say I was 48 years old when I learned, years old when I learned that you have to practice math to be good at it.
Yeah.
Well, you have to practice writing code to be good at it.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very rare individual who's naturally good at writing like code that works first time. Is there such a thing?
I've not seen it in
Only
person
if
yet.
you copied off of Google.
And even then.
Code that works first time. So give yourself that grace. And then if you want to go into leadership, mentorship is important. Where can you practice leadership at every part of your career, right? So is there an event that's going on that you could lead something or be responsible for organizing it? Can you lead a guild? Can you lead a chapter? And these are good ways to learn people management, how to have empathy, how to listen, because these are the things that make for good. And then read everything about what good leaders did, and pay attention to what bad leaders do as well, and go, yeah, that didn't go well. Don't do that. I've learned some of my best lessons for some pretty shocking leaders, like my own bosses, where I'd go, yeah, that feels pretty awful. I'm never going to do that to somebody. And you know who you are.
Damn. Shots fired.
And you know who you are.
Oh, no.
Have receipts.
Wait, so it is my favorite time on the podcast. You know me. It is What is the Tech Tea? Renee Hunt will be sharing her controversial take on the tech industry. So Renee, spill it. What's the tea?
So my controversial take on the tech industry is less about the tech industry and more about business in general. And I think the issue I see in business is often they look at the resources, the very valuable resources they have in tech, and think that they're somehow one-dimensional. And so whilst we're thinking about leadership, right, we're thinking traditionally leadership comes out of marketing, comes out of finance, comes out of operations, comes out of consulting, right? Nobody's generally thinking about the leaders that can come out of tech, or that the tech resource is so valuable because they can do this mystical, magical thing that we don't make the opportunities for them to go work in operations, work in commercial, work in marketing. And this to me is a thing that I see it changing in certain kinds of industries, but not enough, right? Remember, we were talking about code is a basic skill. We're in 2023. There is no business on this planet anywhere, to include farming, that doesn't have some component of that business being relying on some kind of technology or software. So why not? Like, why aren't we seriously looking for the future leaders of our businesses, regardless of what they are, in tech? And here's the other thing. The number of people I've worked with who tried to tell me how to do my job, who are not in tech, when in fact, I have a degree in how to do their job, right? I have a master's degree in business, but they may have written 4 lines of code in their life, but they're going to question decisions we're making around deployment or how we're doing stuff. And I just find that gobsmacking. And again, it's this mentality that, I don't understand business. And more and worse, they think they're going to tell me how to do my job like I'm some sort of agency, or my job is to serve them. And I'm like, no. So in my company, when I landed, I made it very clear that my attitude was, we're a technology business. We're a fintech. The secret's in the name. We are the business. Don't be talking to me about the business said. I'm like, we're the business.
Yeah.
Everything else is a support function. Let's get something except for marketing, because we love our meerkats. Everything marketing, like seriously, they sell. That's how we make money. But the only way we can serve our customers is through technology. So we're the business. And I talk to my team all the time. Like, my job is not to make you future CTOs. My job is to make sure one of y'all maybe runs our company. Why not? Right? So this is the thing. I still find it like, unless it's a tech business, people aren't thinking about technology people as leaders, nor are we providing the learning opportunities, right? So at some point in one of my leaders' career, I should be moving them into commercial or into marketing so that they can someday be the CEO. I could be the CEO.
So why do you think
Mark,
that is
I
the
could
case?
be the CEO, just so you know.
Why do you think that is the case? Why do you think that there isn't that kind of
Because I
trust?
think, remember, like back in the day, technology used to be a cost center. It used to be full of women, right? It reported to things like the chief operating officer or finance, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
There was no seat on there was no CTO, right?
Yeah.
Like, CTO is a title that only became real in the last 20 years. Right? So there was no seat in the exec. And you just go, okay, so if all you're running is an accounting system off of a bit of software, I get that. But if we look at how business has evolved, you just go, really? So I think we're still, as a Western culture, understanding that tech is as essential and central to business as finance.
Yeah.
I would argue more so, right? Soon we will automate finance, the tech people. We'll get rid of them.
Watch out, finance.
Watch out.
But I think it's really curious. We can get into that. Like, everybody's talking about automation and, the robots are coming for your jobs. It's like, hold on, that's a middle class construct. Because if you talk to people who are in working class jobs, the robots have been doing their jobs for 30 years. Automation is not new. And it's now that we're creating automation that's smart enough to do what a lawyer does, right? Now suddenly it's a problem. I'm like, no, that's where we're going. We shouldn't be afraid. But yeah, like, tech is more relevant than jobs that I'm going to automate.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe like, I think that's something that both you and I both kind of like wanted to make that move into software engineering because we wanted to have that future-proof career. And yeah, I can imagine that when, as a technology person who's been in technology and been doing technical roles from the beginning, it might be less appealing to go across to the other side of the business. Like what would motivate me?
I think it's too late for me, but I think I would encourage you to have a broad vision for where your career might go as a result of your foundation in tech. Right? So that's different than jumping out of code too early to take a tangential role, right? But I could see a career track that looked like this. I worked in tech and then I became a product manager. And product manager is one of the best jobs to train you to be a CEO because you got to do all the jobs, right? So you learn a bit of finance, you learn a bit of marketing, learn some operations, you damn sure learn commercial. So right there, you've now got the nucleus for running a business, right? And then they go, we're going to try you out in commercial, right? Like I would encourage us to be thinking broadly about tech as a foundation. Yeah. And you might love it if it makes your eyes sparkle and you spend up all night talking to other like people in hoodies at night talking about code. Like probably you should stay in code, right? But this could launch all kinds of different careers and be open to it because we need our future CEOs, we need our future COOs to have a deep foundation in tech and not just the ones running Google, right? Not just them.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Honestly, fast. We didn't talk about anything juicy.
No, if we want to hear more juicy things from you,
juicy.
How can we keep up with you? How can we get in contact with you?
Oh my goodness. So don't LinkedIn me. Honestly, LinkedIn is like this is overwhelming now. But I was gonna say I was on Twitter, but I'm about to jump. How do we stay in touch when all the social media is just
I don't know,
a cesspool?
Yeah, literally.
Where are you jumping ship to?
I don't know. So I used to have a public Instagram. I think I need to redo my Instagram, but I am on Twitter. So, and I'm still on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter. Renee number 17 is my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle. So look for me on there. But I do need to figure out some sort of like staying in touch. And I'm actually thinking about starting a podcast.
Oh, lovely.
It's been lovely. I was taking pictures of your setup to see how it works. Lord knows what I'll talk about.
Talk about everything.
Yeah, we need all the juicy stuff.
Spilling all the tea.
I want to write a book, but I have to retire first because I'm not going to hold back. It's going to be like Harry, but on steroids.
You won't be sparing anyone.
Because I still have the receipts.
We need a tech one.
Oh, there was one. I'm trying to think of the consulting one. There was a consulting one that came out in the late 90s. And the thing was, it was written like fiction and it was 100% true. And so there were like stories in it where I knew the people who were in the story. I was like, oh, but they wrote it like it was fiction. So they got away with it. Changed the names to protect the guilty. And it was, oh my goodness.
So we'll look out for your book then.
I have to do that. I'll be like, true story. I might name it that, true story.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Glowing in Tech. I'm really excited to share some more community comments that have been happening across our socials based on the episodes we've released so far. If you haven't already, please do leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening. It makes a massive difference and it would be great to hear your thoughts. On Adrian's episode of Pets a Threat, we had over 200 comments on TikTok, people saying that they agreed, they had experienced this, they'd witnessed this, and a lot of people relating to the experience of being seen initially as a pet, and then as you gain competence and you're wanting to progress, people's unconscious bias impacting that and treating you as a threat. It's important to bear in mind that this isn't something that's your fault. This isn't something that is as a result of how you work or what you have done wrong. We highly recommend that people in this situation do what they can to advocate for themselves, but we also understand that not every situation can be remedied by you alone. So if it's costing you your health, psychological, physical, make sure that you are doing your best to keep your eye on other places. Because one overwhelming thing that we've seen from this video and the reactions that we've had is that it is a very common experience for especially Black women, and it's not your job to fix it. So if that workplace isn't doing it for you, you don't have to stay and tolerate it. There are places you can thrive, and you will not always be treated as a threat in those places. We also had a lot of comments on our episode with Nelly, and one that I loved is from Esther. She says, as an introvert myself, one-on-one communication can be incredibly powerful. It allows us to build deeper relationships with others and express ourselves more fully. And we love this because it's testament to the fact that you don't always have to conform to the majority. There is a way for you to shine and be just as valuable, even in your silence and in your quietness, which I think is fantastic. As we saw with Nelly, an incredibly successful person who's able to do all that she does, being an introvert. So that's all from Glowing in Tech. Make sure you're following us on socials, get involved in these conversations. We love to hear it, we love to see it, and let us know what you thought of the episode. Thanks so much, and see you next week.